Man needs his difficulties because they are necessary to enjoy success. APJ Abdul Kalam. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your hostess, Shamisa Ali, and it is a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Good evening to everyone joining us on Facebook and YouTube. Tonight's topic is Local Government Elections 2023 and the Way Forward. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the US, UK, Canada, Guyana, and the Caribbean. Funding support is by well-known philanthropist Dave Narine from Dave West Indian Imports. Please welcome my moderator for tonight, Dr. Tara Singh.
Thank you very much, Shamis, and welcome to our viewers and welcome to our panelists.
Our panelist tonight is Dr. Ganga Ramdas and Professor Mahindra Hariraj, and we are hoping that Dr. Vishnu will join us shortly. He's currently in Guyana. Welcome, everyone.
Good evening,
Thank
Shamisa.
you.
Good
Good
evening.
evening, everyone.
Dr. Tara, go ahead.
Thank you very much and welcome to our viewers. As you know, Monday was a historic day in Guyana. It was local government elections. After a protracted delay, it eventually got underway, and from all reports, there was very little hiccup in the administration, and within some 2 hours, we were able to get the results. That is great when we look at the 5 long months in 2020. So part of the credit due to the fact that we have new people at GCOM who administer the elections and who benefit from criticism of past performance. So that can help them to improve their performance and efficiency. Well, I think by now everybody knows that the PPP won most of the local authority areas. There are 80 local authority areas, of which 10 are municipalities and 70 are regular local authority areas. And according to the General Secretary of the PPP, they should win about 66 to 68 of the local authority areas. And, the PNC did not contest 22 local authority areas. But the PP contested all. In 2018, the PP got 152 local authority areas. In the prior year, in 2016 local government election, they won 48 local. So they have progressively improved. And the turnout rate was estimated about 35% in 2018. Now, in this year's election, it's very difficult to assess the turnout rate because the PNC, first of all, did not contest in 22 local authority areas. And then some areas like where people would normally get a high turnout, there was no contest, like Region 9 in the Rupununi. You were talking about thousands of votes there. So I think that in calculating turnout rates, people have to look at the various local authority and what the voting population sizes, and then you got to do each individually rather than look at an average. Well, I guess you can on average national turnout rate after you do it at the local authority areas. And I just want to say something before I pass to Professor Mahin and Dr. Ganga to make their introductory remarks. And one of the things is, I think that the more significant thing is that in certain PNC strongholds, PP has been able to make some good inroads in varying degrees. But nevertheless, when you compare what happened before and now, it's still, see, people expect change to come just like that. People who are accustomed and attached to a party, whether by race, religion, ideology, they don't change overnight. They don't change within 1, 2, 3, 4 years. You got to take time, you got to convince people. You got to empathize with them. You got to be with them. You got to connect with them. You got to share um, the good times and bad times. They got to look at your development priorities, what you're doing for them at a basic level, whether you provide the basic needs, bread and butter issues, etc. So I think that they have done well in Georgetown, improving their tally of votes by over 6,000. We have the exact figures. And New Amsterdam, they did extremely well. Um, yeah, sorry. Yeah, New Amsterdam, I think eventually the gap is just 2 seats between the two, whereas formerly it is much wider. Linden, a lot of people expect the PP to do better because they were judging that by the red wave they turn out. But those things symbols do not turn out into voting advantage. They just make the people feel good, etc. And people can understand, but they still improve tremendously in the performance in Linden. Now, I'm going to close with that and then pass on the introductory remarks to Dr. Ganga, then Professor Mahin. Dr. Ganga.
Good evening, everyone. I would first like to congratulate the PPP for their outstanding victory. They won in terms of the regions, 5 out of the 10 regions. This is according to one of the statistical sources that I checked. The APNU got 3 out of 10, and there were 2 ties in places where there were major events such as Madhya. Um, what I would like to focus on is the reasons for the strategies that helped the PPP to win. Uh, was the victory due to the traditional race voting largely? Was it issues based? Was it due to advertising spend? Or was it knowing the other side's strategy and then use the One Guyana strategy to mobilize the voters? So both parties appear to have their future campaigns work cut out for them. But it is not clear what strategies would be used. There could be surprises, such as we found in 2015 and in 2020. So I will lead for later discussion the areas of non cooperation and competition, which are elements or which are areas that need to be looked at in detail so that both parties can work peacefully and cooperatively towards putting Guyana on higher ground. So those are my preliminary remarks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ganga. Professor Mahin.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Dr. Tara and Dr. Ramdas and Shamiza. First, I must convey, as Dr. Ganga rightly said, congratulations to the PPPC on their victory in the local government elections. I believe from the data that's been circulating, 82.5% of the votes that was cast on that day is a resounding victory. Whether the opposition wants to acknowledge that or not, they must confront reality. I believe, though, there is still a lot of work when it comes to get the votership turnout on the actual day of elections, because given you have a local government elections with a 35% average turnout, it tells that there's a disconnect from what we would have seen in the campaigning versus the day of election. And there's variety of reasons for these things. but it's definitely, if we want to see transformation and change and Guyana headed to the right direction, the voters and the citizenry have to take this serious. The PPP, I would want to believe, would have exhausted all or most of the efforts to go out to the people. Um, APNO, on the other hand, I did not see a lot of campaigning, but it doesn't necessarily say that while they did not campaign so aggressively, they were not, you know, while they lost, there was still some level of support from their behalf. And we have to take it for what it is, Dr. Tara and Dr. Ramdas. 82%, 82.5% of the local government election tells us that the government of the day is doing something positive, while the vice president would have acknowledged that traditionally the PNC has stronghold areas. There were clearly inroads into many of these demographics. And for example, Georgetown, I was to the understanding there is 11 seats that was obtained, which is an improvement from past years. So as you rightfully said, Dr. Tara, these things will not happen overnight. And the people of Guyana, the citizens of Guyana, have to be conscientious if they want to be mobilized into a future that is going to be prosperous. They have to align that to a government that has a vision, that has a plan that secures that future. So, from the inception of tonight's discussion, I think there's a lot of positives we can take out of this and maybe draw some inference of what maybe be possible for the 2020, the general elections in 2024-25 period. But definitely there is a lot to learn from here, and I think the PPP and the opposition will have a lot of things that they can learn from this, and put that learning curve to the machinery for the general elections to come.
Let me just ask you this, Professor. Do you think this election is also a referendum on the PNC, on the APNO as well as the PPP?
Well, I think, Dr. Tara, given the approach from the opposition leader, I think he doesn't want to confront reality. And definitely the votes in the local government election is pointing to that, with the nature of referendum in that sense, giving the country and the diaspora an indication as to where they stand. Because whether the opposition leader wants to acknowledge that this is a clear defeat, and a defeat would have correlated with his leadership, he's the leader of the party. So while there might not be a massive win in Georgetown, you're talking about the 82.5% taking 82.50 of an election by any stretch of imagination. That is a resounding victory. And I would want to believe if the votership turnout was higher, we would have seen even a wider gap. So definitely this is a form of referendum in my humble view. And the opposition, you would have heard from their past MPs, former Minister Brooms, the other gentleman, the attorney James Bond, coming out in social media and calling out the opposition. So there's clearly a divide, and there's clearly a gap in where the opposition stand. I don't think Mr. Aubrey Norton can face reality to tell anyone with a straight face that he didn't lose the local government's election.
Okay, thank you. Well, we know the PP did extremely well, as I said, 82 or 83% of the total votes. But we got to, there's some restriction in understanding that percentage, because as we said before, a lot of people, the PNC did not contest 22 local authority areas. And then in areas where PPP will get a solid turnout at Region 9, thousands of people we're talking about, there was no contest, so people couldn't go out and vote. So technically, if those people are gone out to vote, the turnout rate will be much higher. At the national level, the turnout rate is 72% at the national average, at national election, not general and regional election. So historically now in Ghana, all over the world, local government election where that take place, they always get a low turnout. But I think that the PPP, by putting so much emphasis on local government election, they will change this attitude now. And people, and what they have to do, they have to give more incentives to NDCs, local authority areas, and pay the councillors as well, so they can show greater interest, and that will attract, qualify people to become part of the process. But right now, I understand only the chairman and the deputy might be given a stipend, but the other councillors, I don't know. Maybe one of you can enlighten me and tell me where they are paying the councillors. If they don't, I think they should pay if they want these people to perform good job, good work, and good service to the community. And there's where you can enhance local democracy and the whole concept of power sharing. So let me hear your views on that, and then we'll take any question from the audience. Professor Mahin, then
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
Gandhi.
I'm with you, Dr. Tara. I think it's rightful with the measurement on and being equal in the equation. If they had contested, let's say in regions 10, sorry, in Letem, there was
Yeah.
no contest in the Letem. But that does not mean if they contested that they would have won, yes. But maybe by non-contest also is an indication that they are losing momentum in these regions because with respect, if you had the necessary personnel to represent the opposition, then I would want to believe there would have been representation in that region. So while I understand if they had participated, it would have changed the dynamics of the votership or the amount of votes. The non-contest also have to be taken into equation. All right. Aside from that, I am with you. As we know from several programs, we are on this path of One Guyana on transforming Guyana. But I think, the local government body administration, they should be paid because it's critical. The country can grow, yes, at the central level, but it is equally important that the NDCs, the local areas, they're also growing at that level and that rate where decision is from that grassroots mentality. Because in order to enhance the country overall, the decision has to start in the small communities and then the cities and so on. So I am with you with respect to all of the, looking at maybe a formula, maybe look at a different pay scale for these persons that's participating because local democracy will translate into the livelihoods of how people behave, policy making, etc. And that can be extrapolated and leveraged at the national level.
Mhm. Yeah, just a quick, in 2018, APNU contested in Letem, and of a total of 1334 votes, they got 528, so they did fairly well. And I was wondering why they didn't contest this area, why they just made it a no contest. But anyhow, we can think about, let's go over to Dr. Ganga.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on Dr. Tara's idea of change, and change takes time. This is so true to achieve national aspirations and achieve a one Guyana objective. The PNC or the APNU party is defining itself by not contesting in all of the constituencies. For example, Latam. No contest there is an abdication of their responsibilities to Guyana and the people. So defining itself and then branding itself now as a city party is not good for Guyana. You can't support democracy with no competition. That would define the party as a party of no cooperation, no competition. So that's not good for democracy, and it's also not good for Guyana. So those would be my overall
Okay.
comments.
Thank you. Thank you. Over to Shamiza. You have any question from the audience?
We don't have any questions at this time, so please
Okay.
continue discussion.
Okay. Let's see now. I know the General Secretary of PP has focused heavily on the three main urban centers, and my feeling is that they really felt that they had a good chance for Georgetown. I may be wrong, but that's my interpretation, my subjective interpretation of this and his focus. But there's other areas that they did fairly well, even though they were not urban centers. If you look at Mocha Arcadia, for example, Mocha Arcadia is a predominantly UPNO stronghold. PP got just a handful of votes. I think seven seven in 2018. But in this year they got over 200 something, which is a good. I mean, at least they get over 200 people who are hardcore PNC people turn towards the PPP. So it shows that you're going to make impact not only in urban centers, in rural areas as well. There's also this. There's another area. Oh, you don't. There are other areas where they have made, but a very interesting development that I see in Region 3, the West Damara region, there has been a number, about 5 or 6 parties, smaller parties. They call the name a Unity and Democracy, Hydroni, or whatever name, and they got 22 seats in the various local authority in West Damara. And some of them did very well. Now, in those areas that they did well, PNC did not contest. And one, the PNC MP had said that they have surrogate political parties that will represent. I don't know how true that is. I didn't hear them say that, but it was reported somewhere. So I was wondering whether the PNC knew in PPP stronghold they couldn't win. So they set up, surrogate parties to run, but to take away votes from PPP, or if they get surrogate party, they will get more votes than them. So they are 22, and they muster among themselves over 8,000 votes. So if you're
Yeah,
making
Dr. Tarai, the reality of it is, as you said, the PPP has, as I mentioned earlier, has a lot to learn still from this as well, and it shows that there is still a degree of loyalty to a particular party given a particular demographic. And the government is making inroads, and it will take time. But again, it shows that despite the policies, despite the changes, there is a level of loyalty to APNU, for example, in some regions. But conscientiously, there is a transformation in Guyana. Now, with respect to the other parties coming to the forefront and contesting the local government elections, I don't think, in my humble view, that is an extension of APNU. APNU has trouble to keep itself afloat, much less saying it has syndicates of party to participate in areas as it did in the Region 3 area. So I believe first and foremost the PPP in these areas like Georgetown, where we felt from the preparation and the campaigning, winning 11 seats is an improvement from past years, but it shows while inroads are being made, there is still a lot of work to get done. And you have to take that on the background or the backdrop that Georgetown has been mismanaged by the PNC for almost coming up on 3 decades or even longer. and it's a culture change, it's a mindset, it's a different thing that has to be accepted, and the narrative that is being peddled and the propaganda dissuade people from the reality. And this will definitely have to be something that the PPP strategically look at, to make sure that their messaging, the way they reach out to people, the way they engage, is going to have to be more concrete and more uh, persuasive in a sense of policy making. I mean, the government is doing many things, but I think when we come to as in this case, the local government election, there is a disconnect somehow that didn't translate into the numbers we were anticipating to see.
Well, if you look at APNU comprised a major party, PNC, but they have some smaller parties attached to them. Um, so there's no reason why these parties that have just emerged in wisdom are can't join with APNU, because that has been their well, that has been in the history, and there's nothing suggests that they can join and they won't embrace them. But we'll see how that unfolds. Just I just got the actual figures. Actually, these smaller parties got 8,331 votes, and the total votes cast throughout the entire country was 188,500, roughly around that. Um, it was more than the previous year, but still, as I said, I think if you check, as I said, I'm careful. I don't want to put a turnout rate, because that would be based on the individual local authority areas. Well, I calculate that, then I can come up with a figure. But Dr. Ganga,
Yes,
the local democratic organs, they work at the local level, I, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of enthusiasm for these groups, or respect by the people, either because they are not performing or they're not supposed to do. I know in the past, politicians in the central government had to complain about they're not acting correctly or doing the job, etc. We had indicated that probably some incentive should be given to increase attention and professionalism. But don't you think that those people who are elected as councillors should undergo some training in local government, in local management, in basic things like budgeting, service, etc., service to people, etc. I think that professional training for all these counselors should be mandatory. That's my view. What do you think?
the opportunities to serve at the local level also requires some amount of responsibility. It would be a good idea to train them along those lines, that the opportunity and the benefits of serving uh, should also require some professionalism. And in that regard, I would support training of the local leadership. So that's one. I just want to rejoin with an overall comment. There is a role for coalitions. There is a role for smaller parties, as the main party, the main APNU is being reformulated. The I would say segments of APNU up for grabs. It's a big opportunity for small parties. Guyana needs coalitions, whether it's PVP or it's PNC. Coalitions can help to bring stability and balance the role of political power within the system. And I think that that would put Guyana on a higher ground or a higher pedestal up the ladder with more vibrant coalitions. We have seen material progress under Highways to Happiness. I think there's a version of that program right now, but all parties need to subscribe under a One Guyana plan, so that the benefits can can be visible and can be supported to serve Guyanese. It's not sufficient just to form the party and then disappear. We need coalitions in order to serve Guyana much better.
So you're saying that the future progress and development of Guyana is dependent upon a coalition arrangement?
Yes, because of the racial divide that we have. It should also balance those forces. Because if the core leadership or top leadership is not performing for the benefit of all, the
Do,
smaller parties can act as a balancing of power,
do,
and it has to be genuine.
do you know of any country where the coalition government has worked effectively to produce good governance and development?
Guyana started out post independence and was successful. Lots of prosperity occurred down
Well,
the to the
uh,
smaller businesses and smaller communities.
but that was short-lived. That UF and there's a coalition of convenience. That was not
Yeah,
just to
PDP.
get rid of the PP party. You see, if you have coalition, I have no problems with coalition, but when you have parties have different ideologies and different policy options and priorities, coalitions, they got to combine and integrate in these values. If not, how they gonna work? That's why coalition governments always collapse very quick.
Yeah, we saw that with the new AFC, Dr. Tara.
Yes,
There
I
was a
did.
lot of the AFC perhaps when they were of their own fruition, they had a different approach, and when they came and collated with PNC, the whole dynamics of that party, whatever sort of good thing about them died very quickly. And Dr. Ganga, to your point, while a coalition of the smaller party or collaboration with them and PNC might enhance the PNC's repertoire, I don't believe, from the experience we know of in Guyana, that any conscientious party who wants to seriously participate in the governance of Guyana, whether that's at the national or the local level, would want to align with the AFC, with UPNO AFC, because once they get into power, we see that facade, that mask being taken off, and we see the true color of the party. I would be more prepared as a Guyanese to say, if a third party, if there are third parties, maybe join an independent force as away from the PNC or PPP, and see if the people of the country takes that seriously. Talking about 8,000 plus votes from a third force or a third party. I mean, even at the national level, the third party can win seats in parliament and participate in that level. Why do they have to join with PNC or the PPP? At the end of the day, if we are talking about democracy and want to be engaged at a national level and make sure that we hold people in checks and balance, we should welcome people to the table, open armed, with respect to whichever they want to participate, whether it's PNC, PPP.
Yeah,
Well, political parties are open to either membership or institutional, either personal or institutional membership. They, as I said, the PNC start to embrace a whole set of smaller parties. They call them APNU. Then they embrace AFC for a while. In the last election, AFC did not get any seat according to reports. They did not win a seat, over 9,000 votes, but yet they were given 8 or 9 seats in parliament because of an arrangement they had. So that's why they depend on the PNC to support them and support their policy and their position. If they can't, they'll be in trouble because theoretically, the leader of the list can remove any member from their side. And I think Mr. Norton is the leader of the UPNO list now. But a lot of small parties can join, as I said, they can join the PPP also made a provision, not necessarily for parties, under the civic umbrella to get individuals. They don't get institutional groups, but individual groups, they joined. And the PP got a high component of civic membership. So,
Well, that's the example that we need to look at. It doesn't mean that the smaller parties would necessarily go towards the PNC. They can equally go towards the PVP. So even though they are small in votes, they will have a voice. So votes versus voice, and we need to change, like you said,
mm,
towards and gravitate towards issue-based consensus. When we
mm.
do that, we will change Guyana, I believe, fundamentally.
Right.
We also have one of the biggest problems we have in Ghana right now is in terms of the two major parties working together, is that the APNO still refer to the president as installed. And in other words, you're saying, I don't recognize you, you are not legitimate, you weren't properly elected. Now, how can you have a dialogue, any kind of meaningful or constructive dialogue, with a party that take that position? That's a major, major issue. I'm not talking about racism. I'm just talking about that racism is another story for another time.
Dr. Tara, I would say we need to make provision to drag those people to court. It's
Mm,
slanderous towards democracy to go through an elections and then at the end of the road you just say those things. That's malicious damage to the country's reputation and to democracy.
mhm.
It's a
Uh,
damaging part to our institution of democracy.
I hear you. Shamiz, do you have any questions?
I don't have questions, but I do have some remarks by our viewers that I do want to,
Go ahead. Go
we
ahead.
have Rhonda Bob says, I think the reason why people didn't go out and vote at the local government election is because people see it as a waste of time because these people get in office and barely anything is done to help these communities. These communities leader make promises, a lot of promises that are rallies, but when the time comes to fulfill these promises, they can't deliver. And I will, like each and every one of you to answer this question. I'm sure it's going to be different, but I feel like she's right. People are not going out, and history has shown that our people don't like to vote. Even here in New York and Queens, we don't have the vote, the presence of the vote. But I feel people don't think anything their vote counts or will make a difference because their promises, they do go out and when they do vote, they feel like nothing is being done. Do you guys feel the same way? What has history shown us? And I mean, how can we make changes? Because we're going to have election 2024, 2025, and we have to make changes now so it can be better during those elections.
Well, first of all, in terms of our, I cannot speak for the Afro-Guyanese, but I can speak for Indo-Guyanese. I don't think we have developed enough social consciousness. We do well at the exams, we do well financially, etc. But in terms of social accomplishments, we are lagging behind. In terms of our civic responsibility, we are lagging behind. And I think that once we elevate that social consciousness, get a greater awareness of our civic responsibilities, our responsibility to our community, to the wider community, to the society, and we should have program very early on from schools to teach people at least one course in civic. When people become American citizens, they got to do some background into civics and history. So I think same thing should happen in school. Start from a very early, get them interested in civic work, in community work, humanitarian work, etc. A lot of colleges now are giving you credits if you perform a humanitarian project. I have had to sign off on many of these for students going to colleges here. So those are the things we can do, and it's no good. We can't chastise people for that because if we grow up in a certain environment where people don't look upon you and they look upon you as an outcast, so to speak, you won't develop any kind of positive attitude to whatever message they send. So we got to try to change this. Our culture in voting in particular is not so strong, but we can't denigrate those people who are coming out and give their heart and soul to vote and to rally at election time. We still have at least about half the people who are coming out. The other half do not, and the other half do not. Many of them might not be around. You got to look at the voters list in Guyana. Over 200,000 are not there. Some may be dead, and many of them are overseas or on vacation because
Right.
all the overseas people who are registered are still on the list. So that's why to use turnout rates is very, very tricky. I try to avoid it as much as possible. And now what people are doing to get better read, they're saying, look at the turnout rate and measure that against the voting age population of the country at this time. So that will give you a better metric, a better understanding of the rate that people go out. And when once you do that, you can see the turnout rate is not as bad as we are suggesting here. For example, if you check at the people at voting age, they might very well be less than 400,000. I'm I'm going to do it. I'm going to check the later on. I'm going to check on that because I'm doing an analysis on that, and it will be published. So I'll let hear your comments on that.
No, no, but Dr. Tara, I'm not to digress from Shamiza's the question from the social media, but I think politics by its nature, there's always a disconnect in what is delivered versus what is promised. But that does not negate the civil duty that folks have to go and vote, because by not taking any course of action, you're not exercising that right, that fundamental right to make the changes that is necessary. So by abstaining doesn't solve the problem. I would want to say in my humble view. But what I find see that has to happen fundamentally in Guyana is the mindset of our people has to change. We have to take things seriously because we are in the global front now as one of the fastest, or if not the fastest, growing economy in the world. And that necessitates a mindset that has to change and has to align with with a different sense of awareness of our duties. So I hear the comment where promises are being made and not that being fulfilled. And I would want to say that while promises are being made, there is also an avenue, Dr. Tara. While we spoke about compensation for the counselor, there should also be some metric in place to have reviews, level of standard of what gets done, how it's get done, with what speed does it get done, and hold people accountable. And whether we wait for local government elections to elect these personnel to these posts, we should also have performance reviews if they are being compensated to execute certain decisions. The local government minister was on this program and he spoke about reprimands that occurred, removals, and so on. I think there have to be a more conscientious way of how we administrate the local government bodies. And that means not just election time, it is serious, and then we come back next election. But fundamentally, we must do more concrete reviews. Look how monies are being spent, how effective is it being spent. And people, the citizenry, the people of those areas will have the final say to measure how things are getting done. And I think those are some of the things that is missing in the commentary there. When election time comes up, you have this campaign and you hear the rhetoric of all of the great things that will happen, and then there's dormancy until the next election period. So I think there must be some level of accountability at the local level as well.
I
Yes.
agree with you totally,
Yeah.
Professor Mahendra.
Mhm. Dr. Ganga.
Yeah, we are at the intersection here between uh, 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 political, social, and economic. We have these three spheres. Um, we it's a good idea to start at the schools, but we also should recognize our community leaders, respect and honor them because they have a big voice in the community. They can help to bring balance. Right
Yeah.
now, it appears that we are unbalanced in many ways. Now, coming to the performance reviews, we emphasize infrastructure and investment, but we don't have a parallel to balance the system with the social components, the social organizations that serve our various communities. So it's good to inculcate and have the young people sensitized with that information, which they can then discuss with their parents, ask questions, and increase their participation. So it's a mixture of areas that we need to tackle and then do periodic social reviews. One of the imbalance that I see that would greatly affect Guyana is the on the consumption side. We need to formalize that. The Minister of Education a couple of weeks back said this is so to bring the Because We Care program within the budget. Well, a lot of things can be spun off with that program. Maybe they could explain the basis for it and the extent to which it's going to affect future lives. So all these add up to the social sector benefits and also to balance investment with consumption. Because if we don't do that, we have a major problem looming. There are some economic laws that point to that, but we wouldn't go through with that. We just say we need to balance the system. And when you balance the system, investment and consumption, we would gravitate to the right level. Otherwise, what will happen? Like they say, all water find their own levels, and that has deep meaning. So we don't want to have a lopsided situation between consumption and investment. It would lead to problems and unfulfilled promises. So the performance should go both into the social sectors as well as to the infrastructure investment sectors, where we have heard about, you know, how they monitor road building and so forth. But those are areas that can be part of the educational experience, both for people living in Guyana and for tourists and those who visit Guyana,
Mm.
to see the progress that's being made in that area, and also to have an idea that we're not overshadowing the social sectors. Perhaps the Because We Care program that can be a good vibrant starting point to start building social sector strength and awareness and the sensitivity of people to our political voting system as well.
Yeah.
Now,
Sorry if I may add a
mm,
comment. Apart from the accountability needs, I believe, from these councillors across the length and breadth of Guyana, I also feel one of the questions that I can see spinning off of the comment that Chamiza raised was, aside from election time, when these councillors, maybe their names are a bit more fluid and their pictures are a bit more noticeable, I also believe, I would suggest that the councillor has a fiduciary responsibility to have ongoing engagement with the communities, whether that is at every policy levels, have constant engagement. Because what I find see also is a disconnect. At election times, these names are known, and then the next election time. But where is the active engagement that the communities meet with their councillors, voice a concern, a particular project has to be undertaking? Where is sort of that dialogue? And I'm humbly suggesting that that level of collaboration would be transformational in how we administer the local government bodies, in addition to accountability and payments, etc.
Well, what you said is correct, but I must gotta tell you, since the Irfanali government went to production, they have taken government to the people every week. Ministers and councillors are meeting with people in every village, in every corner of the country, to ask them what their concerns, and those that they can fix, they fix it immediately. And it's not a one-time shop, it's an ongoing process. That is part of the new governance that they are injecting into the system. It's happening right now, what you're talking about. They're doing it now. Whether every councillor is living up to the thing is a different matter. But generally, that's the trust of the government, taking government to the people. You find that most of the ministers, they spend most of the time out in the fields, looking at problems, solving, monitoring, take complaint, solving issues, etc. So they're on that track.
You're right.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, right, Dr. Tara, but that's at the central government level. And
Well,
without any doubt, the president and ministers are very engaging, engaging with these communities, and they're actionable. We see the transformation of roads, schools, medical facilities across the country. An environment that is conducive for economic and social transformation is happening. But not to sway away from the local government topic here with respect to the local government, these councillors bodies. I believe they have that duty apart from the waiting on central government to come to an area. They should be a little more alacrity of how they carry out the local government administration as well, in tandem with what the government
yeah,
is doing.
they're doing it, and but what makes their work easier is when you get the people from the central government to be there. They can manage problems easier if they're there. You know, the potential power of the minister or the president means a lot to them. Without that, I visited about 3 local authorities here recently when I went to Guyana, and I discussed a few things happening in the village. I told them this, and these guys said, okay, when we meet our meeting, we will discuss that. And what has happened, follow up, they said they need to get an excavator to clean the drains so they won't get flooding. And within a couple of morning, they managed to get the excavator. So they are doing things of their own, but everybody will not work at the same pace. It will take some time. And that's what I'm saying. You can get much more out of these people if you incentivize the operation a little bit, give them a salary, and give them a little more power, a little more autonomy. And that will make the position attractive, and they can perform better, far better. And but all this is a process of development,
Yeah,
evolution. It will take time.
yeah, I agree with
This,
you.
so,
I would agree with Dr. Tara there. What we need is to professionalize the services, and we must have clear lines of responsibility, which implies that we must see delegation of responsibilities and alongside the clear lines of responsibility. It's a good idea for the president to go into the community, but the president should not be bogged down with uh, just taking government to the people. The president could also look at how delegation of authority and responsibilities are being carried out to develop better administration in all of the communities, so that what happened at Madhya should have been detected with an early warning system through clear lines of responsibilities,
mhm,
and like we said, have reviews of those responsibilities and how
mhm,
the
mhm.
goals are being achieved.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Central government should define exactly the relationship if it's not defined already in the law, in the constitution, the law that's set out. But they need to get definite lines of authority and and assignment of responsibility, etc. Now we almost come to program time, and we are going to ask.
Dr. Tara, Professor Mahindra, and Dr. Ganga, I totally agree with each and every one of you. However, it's clear based on our discussion tonight, there is some disconnect. And I think it's important right now, both parties and even the smaller ones that we have that are, coming together, it's clear that there is disconnect and we need to find where that disconnect is so we
When you
can
say,
work on it and
excuse me,
make it better.
when you say disconnect, what you really mean? A
Well,
party that got 82% of the votes,
no,
you
no,
will
no.
say
Look,
there is disconnect.
there's some
What do you really
disconnect
mean?
in terms. There are disconnect in terms of, there's not clear communication. People didn't go out and vote because they just don't know who to vote for. There's something going on there between the people and the parties, and I feel that the parties need to figure out what that is and really
I,
work on it. And I
I
think it would be better.
anyhow, that's your opinion. We got to respect it. But I mean, a party that gets um, 68 of 80 local authorities, 82% of the total votes cast, and set out powerful and deliver so many, not only service, so many accomplishments they have. I really can't see any disconnect here. I mean, some people, anyhow,
I think
I'm going to ask,
let
I'm
me
going to ask,
just make a quick
Ganga,
point
make your
there.
close. Dr. Ganga, make your
Shemiksa
closest.
mentioned communication. That's the magic word.
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
There is communication, there is disconnect.
I,
Something's happening and we need
I,
to fix it. That's all I'm
I,
saying, Dr.
I don't know
Tara.
if there's miscommunication among the PVP and their supporters. I don't. Anyhow, Dr. Ganga, please make your closing remarks.
Well, we need to look at our future with a broad vision to bring all the parties together into a cooperative framework so that we can have a common set of goals that people know about, and we're actively working towards that. There's a great movie, the the Nash movie. I think that's we should look at that. Where Professor Nash from Princeton, I think he was, he talked about there are two strategies in one: cooperation and non-cooperation. So we need to change non-cooperation into cooperation. Have a cooperative strategies. We can't have the APNU non-cooperating with the government that has been elected. That would not serve Guyana, and others would step in and exploit Guyana.
Mm.
So
Is
thank
I
you,
guess
Dr. Tara.
your idea of cooperative means inclusive, right?
Well,
Is that the
yes,
same as
there's a
inclusive?
role for all of the groups, and they should not abandon their roles.
Okay.
That's cooperation.
Thank you, sir.
It's like an
Professor Mahin.
anthill.
Yeah,
Let's go.
Agree, Dr. Gaga.
lot of interesting points of views here, but as Dr. Tara said, we can't walk away from 82.5% of an election without any, you know, further commentaries. It is a resounding victory. However, I do believe, given from certain localities, etc., NDC's areas, there is a lot of work still to be done. And I think there is a lot of strategies that we can, you know, think about across the board when it comes to the administration and politics and all of those things. But with respect to the local government, management, I believe from this conversation, it seems the councillors also have a tremendously important role to play in this other than being elected. And I think engagement with the constituencies are very important. I think involvement with them is important, leveraging the support of central government, and also accountability to central government and outlining those necessary requirements and criteria that is going to hold them in place. And Dr. Tara, I think I like the idea of compensation because at that point, you're holding people to a level of accountability based upon performance. And it means that the execution of certain functional tasks and responsibilities will have to be done in a particular way. So while we have the local government elections behind us now, and the PPP can, rightfully say they are victors from this, I also believe they can learn a lot from areas maybe they didn't do as well, and re-strategize how they engage those areas. And the councillors and the winners and even the contenders of the PPP and other parties, in particular here, it means that these individuals have to take this responsibility seriously.
Thank you.
Great.
I know there's some concern expressed by a few people that the areas in which the PPP didn't win, they may probably penalize those areas. That is the most ridiculous thing I've heard. The PP is a government for everybody, and the vice president said today, whether they win or lose, each will get their fair share. They have a development plan for each local authority area, and they will work according to their manifesto. So people don't have to worry about whatever plans and programs and projects they have, they will implement them. That they are a government for everybody, every group, every community, every region. So I want to congratulate the PP for doing a great job. They won 7 of 10 of the municipalities, while they would like to capture Georgetown. Well, they didn't. So the PNC has 3 municipalities, the PPP has 7, and they have at least 68 of the local authority areas, whereas the PNC, the APNU, has 12. I don't know if those are based on preliminary data. I don't know if GCOM is going to issue subsequent final data, but that's the position. And so we wish the government is take another look at how they liaison or how they communicate and how they interact with the local democratic organs and the regional democratic office, because we need to make those institutions very strong. If they are strong, the central government could be strong. And Dr. Jagdev did say, once we get like-minded people in the NDCs and the regional offices, it will be better because they can work together in harmony. There won't be that conflict. But if you have a different ideology, a different perspective, there can be a conflict with the local government and the local government there. So I hope that doesn't emerge. And going back to Dr. Ganga, your thing about cooperatives, and I think the government is trying hard to be inclusive as much as possible, but it depends on how the opposition will respond. Even last night, I watched a program how one of the panelists was criticizing the government for something that they are doing. And when you have insufficient information and you make strong remarks, that's very, very unhelpful and very unfair. Anyhow, I want to thank all the panelists, and Shamiza, over to you for the final word.
Yeah, Dr. Tara, some of the key words that we heard tonight was accountability, communication, and many other words that I feel that we need to take it. We might not all agree on certain things, but it's necessary to have the discussion. And I think tonight we truly had an amazing discussion. I look forward to many other discussions here on the Guyana Dialogue. Thank you to our viewers, our panels. Until next time, I'm Shamiza Ali, and this is the Guyana Dialogue. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.